Okay, the second topic we're going to speak about is documenting acts of terror on Shabbos. Documenting acts of terror on Shabbos. I hope you prepared the right subject. Documenting acts of terror on Shabbos. So in 2017, there were a wave of terrorist attacks. There were stabbings and car attacks that took place daily. And security personnel reported that the security cameras helped immensely, where if they were able to get a picture of the perpetrator, so they were able to try to track him down, catch him, and stop the perpetrator from further attacks. So the question is, let's say the following scenario. Somebody opens up his front window on Shabbos, and he sees a terrorist stabbing someone. There's no time to save the life of the victim. There's no time to stop the terrorist. But if you snap a picture, you could send it to security and possibly prevent future attacks. The question is, are you allowed to be Mechalo Shabbos to maybe save someone's life in the future? We all know you're allowed to be Mechalo Shabbos to save someone's life now. You're allowed to even be Mechalo Shabbos to definitely save someone's life in the future, but can you be Mechalo Shabbos by snapping a picture? Whether a picture is a Dairaisa or a picture is D'Rabbanan, that's not the question right now. But can you desecrate Shabbos to maybe save someone's life in the future? Could you be Mechalo Shabbos to suffix save someone's life in the future? So what is the source that you're allowed to be Mechalo Shabbos to save someone's life? On page 20, you have the Mishnah in Masechta Yuma on Daf Pei Gimel, where the Mishnah says that Rabbi Masya ben Chara said, if you have an ailment in your throat, you could put a medication because maybe this person's life is in danger, and any suffix nefashos on Shabbos, you could desecrate Shabbos. What is the makar in the Torah that you're allowed to be Mechalo Shabbos to save a life? What's the makar? Why you're allowed to be Mechalo Shabbos to save a life? So the Gemara gives two reasons. The Gemara in Yuma on Pei Hei Amud Beis. On your sheet, it's number 21. The Gemara in Yuma brings two reasons why you're allowed to be Mechalo Shabbos to save a life. Reason number one is, Reb Shimon ben Menasya says, V'shamru b'nei Yisrael Shabbos, better to desecrate one Shabbos now and observe many Shabbosos in the future. That's one purest the Gemara brings. The Gemara brings another purest. Rabbi Yehuda said in the name of Shmuel, I would have said a much better pshat. V'chai bohem. Now what's very interesting is we do not hold lemaisa that the reason you're allowed to be Mechalo Shabbos is because mutav sheyechalel Shabbos achas kedei sheyishmeru Shabbos harbei. Even though all the Perushim and all the Sifrei Drush bring better to desecrate one Shabbos now and keep many in the future, we don't hold that lemaisa. That's not the reason. The reason is because of v'chai bahem. What's the nafkamina? What the source is? So if you look in Rashi, Rashi says, look where my arrow is on page 21. Rashi says that according to the reason of v'chai bahem, if the reason you're allowed to desecrate Shabbos is to observe many more Shabbosos, well, what if it's only a suffix if you're going to observe more Shabbosos? What if you're not sure you'll be successful? Then you can't do it. But if the reason is because of v'chai bahem, that human life takes priority over Shabbos observance, then even if it's only a suffix, if you're going to save a life, even then you'd be allowed to desecrate a life. So halacha l'maisa, we hold, are you allowed to be Mechalo Shabbos to maybe save a life? Yes. Why? Because we don't hold of the reason of mutav sheyichalel Shabbos achas kedei sheyishmeru Shabbosos harbei. That only allows you to save a vadai life. We hold the reason is because of v'chai bahem. V'chai bahem says even a maybe life would take priority over Shabbos. Okay. Comes Shulchan Aruch and the Rambam, and they all paskin that you're allowed to desecrate Shabbos even to save a suffix life. Take a look in Shulchan Aruch Siman Shin Chaf Ches, page 23. Sif Yud. Kol Chayli, any illness. Shaharoifim oimrim, that the doctors say shehu sakana, afal pi shehu ala basar, even if it's a skin ailment. Mechalin of a Shabbos. What if one doctor says you need to save his life and another doctor says, nah, nothing will happen to him, we desecrate Shabbos? Sif Yud Aleph. Chola sheish by sakana. If you have a chola that's in danger, Shamdu b'yom Shabbos shetzarach lasos lo refuah yedua sheish by meleches chol Shabbos shmoina yamim. Ein oimrim namtin ad halayla v'nimtza shloil chalav ela Shabbos achas. Let's say like this: a chola that's in danger, that they evaluated him, that he could live for 8 days. So he said, okay, we'll wait until Matzah Shabbos, and then we'll desecrate Shabbos. This way we only have to desecrate one Shabbos. No, if the guy's life is in danger now, you save his life right now. The bottom line is, we paskin, if someone's life is suffix in danger, you're allowed to be Mechala Shabbos. Okay, that's the starting point. Comes the Beis Yosef, look on page 29, and the bottom line, the Beis Yosef says, Kasav Rabbeinu Yerucham, Yesh Misha Kasav, Shekol Davar She'ein Boi Sakana Ata. What if the person's life is not in danger now? Afal Pi Sheyuchal Lavo Lidei Sakana. But it could come to danger. Ein Mechalelin Ela Shvus D'Rabbanan. Avalo Yisur D'Oraisa. If a guy's life is not in danger now, his life is in danger in the future. In other words, are you allowed to desecrate Shabbos maybe to save a life in the future? You're not sure if it will save his life in the future. Then the Beis Yosef says you can only violate a D'Rabbanan, you can't violate a D'Oraisa. In other words, you have somebody, you have a choila. You're not sure. Right now he's okay, but maybe in the future his life will be in danger. You can't violate D'Oraisas. You can only violate D'Rabbanans. So what do we learn from here? That there's a difference between danger now and danger in the future. Danger now, you could desecrate D'Oraisa. Danger in the future, there's an opinion you cannot desecrate a D'Oraisa. Furthermore, in the back of the Mishnayos, there's a purest on Mishnayos called Hagois Mahari. Hagois Mahari says like this: let's say a guy is sick now, and the illness that he has now might lead to a second illness, and that second illness could put his life in danger. So right now he's not in danger. He has one illness. It may precipitate a different illness that will put his life in danger. So right now, is his life in danger? No. But it might cause an illness that will put his life in danger. You're not allowed to desecrate Shabbos. Because the second illness he doesn't have now. The first illness, you know what he likens this to? If somebody has a scorpion about to attack them, you're allowed to kill the scorpion because the scorpion definitely will kill somebody. But a snake, we have no idea if a snake will kill someone. And a snake is coming. You're not allowed to kill the snake on Shabbos. If the snake bites someone and we see the snake is dangerous, then you're allowed to kill him. So from here we learn a very important principle. There's a major difference in halacha when it comes to desecrating Shabbos between someone's life in danger now and someone's life who might be in danger in the future. Just because his life might be in danger in the future, contrary to what we're used to thinking, that automatically anytime there's any possibility whatsoever that someone's life's in danger, you could desecrate Shabbos, is not true. Only if currently the person's life is in danger, not if someone's life is in danger in the future. Then we might say maybe only D'Rabbanans, not D'Oraisas. This is a question that there is a tremendous amount of uncertainty among poskim. Can you desecrate Shabbos for now? If someone's life is in danger now, maybe. If someone's life maybe is in danger now, could be Mechal Shabbos. If someone's life will definitely be in danger in the future, you could be Mechal Shabbos. If someone's life might be in danger in the future, that's the question, okay?
If that snake is not a venomous, you don't know if that's not a venomous snake.
You have no idea.
But it could be. So that's what? That's something.
If right now there's a snake coming and it might be venomous, you're allowed to kill it. But most snakes that are coming, there's no reason to assume it's a deadly snake. It's just about maybe a danger in the future. You can't kill it. So this is an area of halacha that we really don't have clear guidance of. Listen carefully again. If someone's life now maybe is in danger, you could desecrate Shabbos. Is in danger in the future, definitely, you could desecrate Shabbos. Someone's life might be in danger in the future. The Beis Yosef brings an opinion, you can only violate the Rabbanans, you can't violate the Oraisas. So what we need to do is we need to see if we could glean any definitive information regarding what does halacha say about desecrating Shabbos for a possibility of danger in the future. What's the halacha on Shabbos if there's a fire in a house? Chas v'shalom. Are you allowed to put out a fire on Shabbos? No. Are you allowed to put a fire? No. If people's lives are not in danger, you're not allowed to put out a fire on Shabbos. So, if you look in page 27, the Shulchan Aruch says in Siman Shin Lamed Daled, this is quoted in the Chuvas of Rav Asher Weiss, where the Trumas Hadeshin brings nowadays that we're among the nations of the world, and if there's a fire, they plunder, and we're afraid they're going to steal. And because we're afraid they're going to steal, we're afraid people are going to stand up to them, and it's going to lead to sakanas nefashos. You could put out a fire. And the Rama concurs. But then it would come out that nowadays, in 2025, if there's a fire and nobody's plundering anything, that you would not be allowed to pull out a fire on Shabbos. So the bottom line is, the conclusion of the Rama is, if there's a fire in a Jewish house on Shabbos, can you put it out? And you clear the whole family out of the house. A house is burning down. Are you allowed to put out a fire on Shabbos, according to the Rama? The Rama said you could do it only because the Goyim are going to plunder and then you're going to stand up for your money. But for all intents and purposes, the Rama says you cannot put out a fire on Shabbos. You know that halacha? The Rama says, B'zman hazeh, you cannot put out a fire on Shabbos. Come the Achronim, and the Achronim, the Eliyahu Rabbah says that B'zmanenu, where the homes are very close to each other, and if you don't put out the address 13, it's going to spread to address 15, it's going to spread to 17. And very nice, in home 13, everybody's out of the house, but in 15, they're still sleeping. And in 17, there's an old man. And in 19, there's a kid. The Achronim say, Bizman hazeh, where a fire is going to spread from one home to another, you're allowed to put out that fire on Shabbos. Okay? But what the Poskim speak about Bizman hazeh is that might be true in Chutz La'aretz, where they build junky houses. In America, houses are wood. So if there's a fire on one house in Borough Park, the whole block goes. And if there's a fire in one store, the whole block goes. But in Eretz Yisrael, where the homes are stone, and if there's a fire in one house, it will not spread to the next house. Are you allowed to put out a fire? That was the question that Rav Asher Weiss struggled with. Okay? So B'zman hazeh, there's a fire in a house in America, you put it out. Why? It will spread. You see in the news every day. And by the way, I want you to know, if you see it in the news, then it must have happened. It's emes ha'amitai. No, you know that when something is in the news, then it might have actually happened. It's possible. There's no evidence that it happened, but it could have happened. But we do hear stories. In America, if there's a fire in a house, you put out the fire. B'zman hazeh. That's the Eliyahu Rabbah. The question is, does this apply in Eretz Yisrael? So Rav Asher Weiss said, upon further investigation, because they're gas tanks and they're electrical wires, it is very likely the fire will spread. So if there's a fire in a house in Eretz Yisrael, and you say, well, let's get out of the house, take the kids out of the house, and let it burn, you're a chassid shaita. You're a fool. You're endangering other people's lives. Okay, that's his conclusion. However, what's very interesting is, let's go back to the Lashon of the Rama. If you examine the Lashon of the Rama says, what's the reason why you're allowed to put out a fire on Shabbos? The Rama says, because it's a malacha she'eina tzricha legufa. You hear this? Is kibui, is extinguishing a malacha on Shabbos? Are you allowed to put out a fire on Shabbos? If you're putting out the fire to make ashes, it's a malacha tzricha l'gufa, you're not allowed to do it. But if you're putting out the fire because you don't want the fire, this is called malacha she'ein tzricha l'gufa. So the poskim say, wait a second, why does the Rama say that you're allowed to put out the fire because it's a malacha she'ein tzricha l'gufa? Why doesn't the Rama say you're allowed to put out the fire because maybe you're going to be endangering someone's life? Must be because maybe endangering someone's life in the future is not called sakanas nefashos. There is no heter. Oh, maybe you're endangering someone's life. Sakanas nefashos is when you're definitely endangering someone's life now. You're definitely endangering someone's life in the future, or maybe endangering someone's life now. But maybe endangering someone's life in the future, that's not sakanas nefashos. Whoever told you that geder and halacha? Again, what we're clarifying is there's a misconception of the definition of sakanas nefashos. People think, oh, it might cause someone's life to be in danger. No. If it currently maybe causes someone's life to be in danger, or definitely in the future, but maybe in the future is not sakanas nefashos. Now, where does this play a role in halacha? This plays a role in hostage exchange. Very simply, in hostage exchange. Can you save the life of one Jew and release 400 terrorists? Could you do it? What's the halacha? Could you save the life of one Jew by releasing 400 terrorists? Now, what are these terrorists going to do? They're going to go to the Beis Medrash and learn Mesilas Yesharim? What are they going to do? They're back at it. We know. They say what they're going to do. Is it a suffix? Is it likely? So I want to share with you, many are unaware that Rav Moshe Feinstein has a psak regarding this issue, whether you could save someone's life, a hostage's life, by releasing terrorists. It's not in the Igros Moshe. There's a printed letter from Moshe Feinstein that he penned to Gold of MMH when Jews were taken hostage, that she should release terrorists to save life. You know that? We have Rav Moshe Paskin. You should do it. Moreover, we have a letter from the Stipler in Orchos Rabbeinu. The Stipler said, what should the Israeli government do? The Stipler said, in his opinion, they should release terrorists to save Jewish lives. But then the Stipler heard, they told the Stipler about the Entebbe raid, that they were successful in getting out, freeing the hostages without releasing. He's like, only Yidden could carry out such a thing. So even the Stipler had something good to say about the IDF, okay? The Stipler writes, wow, he was amazed that they were able to accomplish that. The Stipler said, though, that whether they should do it or not, he says they're allowed to do it, and the decision should be made up to the government. That's what the Stipler writes in Orchos Rabbeinu. And Rabbi Ovadia Yosef wrote as follows, okay? This is a very important lamdas. Are you allowed to do an autopsy on a body? What's the halacha? Are you allowed to do an autopsy on the body? Everybody knows that to do an autopsy on a Jewish body is a lav in the Torah of nivul hames, lo yisalen nivlasay olav. It's nivul hames. It's desecrating a dead body. What if by doing an autopsy on the body, you could gain medical knowledge and save lives in the future? Are you allowed to do an autopsy? It says in Rabbi Yehuda, if Ruvain is sitting here and Shimon is dead, and Shimon is lying here with an illness, and by doing an autopsy on Ruvain, you could gain medical knowledge to save Shimon's life right now, you're allowed to do it. But if you just want to do an autopsy on a body, because maybe you could save someone's life in the future, you're not allowed to do it. There is no geder and halacha of saving a maybe life in the future. Okay? That's the tshuva of the Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda writes that you cannot do an autopsy on a body to maybe save someone's life in the future. But what do you mean? Sakanas nefashos, pikuach nefashos. No, says the Rabbi Yehuda. You cannot save someone's life in the future. You cannot desecrate a body to save someone's life in the future. Comes Rabbi Vad Yosef. If you can't do an autopsy on a body to save someone's life in the future, why? Because saving maybe a life in the future is not reckoned as saving a life, then you're allowed to release terrorists to save someone's life, because the fact that these terrorists might or likely will take lives in the future, halacha, when it comes to life, does not look into the remote possibilities or even likely possibilities of the future. We don't look into the future when it comes to saving life. Saving life means the here and the now, not what's going to be in the future. So, listen carefully. Rabbi Vad Yosef, based on the Rabbi Yehuda, says, if you're not allowed to do an autopsy because you're not allowed to violate a law to maybe save a life in the future, then you're allowed to save the life of a hostage by releasing terrorists. But in all likelihood, they're going to go back at it. We don't concern ourselves with the possibility of the future, even if it's somewhat likely. What's interesting is that some poskim say that the Rabbi Yehuda doesn't apply b'zman hazeh. Why not? For example, there's a sefer Shal Tshuvos Chavolim Baniimim, Shal Tshuvos Chavolim Baniimim, that says b'zman hazeh you're allowed to do an autopsy on a body, even to gain medical knowledge for the future. You know why? Because it's not considered medical knowledge for the future, because as soon as you do the autopsy, the information will get out immediately. Nowadays that there's internet, or there's widespread transmission of information, and as soon as you gain the medical knowledge, it's going to get to the hospital down the block and to the hospital in South Africa immediately. So it's not called a remote possibility in the future. By gaining that information, you're saving lives immediately.
But it has to be a fact that you're getting medical knowledge.
Now, I don't think that's even accurately, practically, because any information that the medical world gains today, they need to make a study, and they need to write a journal, and they need to approve it, and it has no practical ramification for it could be for a year or many years.
It could happen right now. You need an Aver or something. You need a heart.
Yeah, if you do an autopsy today, if we're dealing with doing an autopsy to get a limb, and everybody knows there are lists around the world of people waiting for kidneys or other limbs, that would be something else. But if it's exploratory in nature, if it's just to possibly gain information in the future, just because the information will spread right away, it's hard to make the case that you'd be allowed to do that autopsy.
So why when someone's still alive, you can donate the kidney, and when you're dead, you can't donate the kidney? Donate. You have somebody you want to give it to.
What, somebody who's alive?
Somebody's alive, you can donate the kidney, right?
According to some.
You can't donate the kidney.
What?
And when you're dead, the family cannot donate the kidney to you.
The reason why you're dead, you can't donate the kidneys. I don't think the kidney is donatable. You know, certain organs are no longer...
I'm talking about your rights in the will that comes from you needs it, they should give it.
Yeah, even if you're right, I don't think that every single limb functions when a person is clinically dead. It has to be, right, only if they're bein hashmashos, they're in a certain period where they might be only brain dead, but their heart is beating. What would you say about the following situation to bring as a proof whether you could desecrate Shabbos for the remote possibility of saving a life in the future? Take a look on your sheets. I want to bring your attention to page 34. Okay? 34 comes from the Sefer Ratz Katzvi, Reb Tzvi Reisman, which a lot of these subjects and topics in Mar Makayimos come from. He brings from a Paisek in Eretz Yisrael, Rabbi Yosef Tzvi Rimon. He's the author of Halacha b'Makora and the head of Beis Medrash Machon Maggid Harakiah. He wants to bring a raya from the following case. The Gemara says in Yuma, we don't do Chilul Shabbos for a Chayla Sheish by Sakana, not al Yidei Nachrim, not al Yidei Ketanim, only al Yidei Gedoylei Yisrael. Yeah? You hear this? The Gemara tells us that Lamaisa, in order to do Pikuach Nefashos B'zman Hazeh, you only use Jews and you only use Gedoylei Yisrael. You don't use Goyim and you don't use Ketanim. Why? So the Rosh explains, because even though right now this Gentile, he could save the life, or this kid could save the life, but it might lead in the future that if you're in a similar situation, it might lead that they won't do a good enough job. Right now, they know what they're doing. Right now, they're adequate. But in the future, they might not be cut out to accomplish the task. So doesn't that imply that you're allowed to desecrate Shabbos now? Right now, do we need to desecrate Shabbos? No. The kid could do the job. The Gentile could do the job. It's just that we're worried if the kid or the Gentile does a job, in the future, they will not be successful in saving a life. But who cares about the future? And it's only a maybe. Doesn't that show that halacha recognizes that it's worthwhile to desecrate Shabbos now for the possibility of rescuing a life in the future? Do you feel that's a good raya? Could you bring a raya from the Gemara and the way the Rosh understands the Gemara? That the fact that we don't use Ketanim, doesn't that imply it's because we're worried for the possibility that in the future they won't do an adequate job? Rav Rimon says, no, it's not a raya at all. Why? Listen carefully. Because right now you're dealing with someone whose life is in danger. So you have a heter pikuach nefashos. The question is, can I use a child in a situation where there's a vaday sakanas nefashos now? We'll say, don't use a child. Then we recognize because what might be in the future. But that doesn't mean in general we'll desecrate Shabbos when there's not sakanas nefashos, because of the remote possibility in the future there might be. You see why this is not conclusive? Because we're dealing with a situation right now. We're dealing with a situation right now where the person's life is definitely in danger. The question is, can we use a katan? No, don't use a katan, because it might lead to a remote possibility in the future that his life won't be in danger. But that doesn't mean that when someone's life is not in danger, we need to recognize a remote possibility in the future. I'm going to just share with you two more cases. We know that if somebody goes out on Shabbos beyond the Tchum to save a life, are they allowed to return on Shabbos? Technically, right? If you leave the Tchum on Shabbos, shaloi bershus, you can't come back within the Tchum. If you leave bershus, for example, for Eidos HaChodesh, or you're a midwife, or for Atzos Nefashos, Ram Gamliel was masakein that you're allowed to come back. Why was Ram Gamliel masakein you're allowed to come back? V'chol hayotzim lahatzon nefashos Yisrael chayzrim b'Shabbos kedei shaloi lachshilam la'asad lavoi. Otherwise, they're not going to do it again. Okay, so now, what's the halacha? And I know what you think, but I want you to be very careful before you give this answer. If somebody goes to do a Hatzalah call, are they allowed to return on Shabbos? Rav Shlomo Zalman says he doesn't think so. Rav Shlomo Zalman says he doesn't think so. Why should he be allowed to return? Why? He's not going to save the life if we don't let him? He's not going to save it? Says Rav Shlomo Zalman, in his opinion, since the whole chash is, well, maybe in the future he won't come and save a life, in his opinion, he doesn't really feel we could allow them to return. But, kvar hoira hazakin. Rav Moshe already gave a heter. Rav Moshe gave a heter. Rav Moshe said, we're concerned that if we don't allow somebody to return from saving life, they won't do it in the future. Rav Moshe said, they're allowed to return. So Rav Shlomo Zalman said, it bothers him, he's not comfortable with it, but kvar hoira hazakein. But they can only violate the Rabbanans, not the Iraisas.
Especially if we have LED cars.
So if you have an LED car, fine. But according to many poskim, electricity is a dairaisa. According to Chazon Ish, electricity is dairaisa. It might be makabeh patish, so even an LED, okay. So, but let's think about the heter. The heter is, we're afraid shaloi lahater, what's the heter? Kedei shaloi lahachshilam la'asad lavai. Is it definitely they won't save a life in the future? Or is it only a possibility they won't save a life in the future? It's a possibility. So doesn't that indicate you're allowed to desecrate Shabbos because maybe it will cause somebody's life to be in jeopardy in the future? What? Rav Moshe didn't differentiate. Yeah, Rav Moshe didn't differentiate. Rav Shlomo Zalman said only the Rabbanans. I'm going to end off where we started from. Okay? This might sound somewhat familiar in light of the story you heard from Rabbi Yehuda. By the way, Rav Asher Weiss wants to say that you would be allowed to be Mechal Shabbos for a remote possibility of Pikuach Nefashos in the future. He wants to bring the following raya. The Gemara in Baba Kama says on Daf Pei Gimel that Avtalumos Bar Ruvain allowed a certain type of haircut if you're close to the government. Okay, this was a haircut which is considered Darchei Amayri. So Beis Yosef is Matmiya. If this haircut is Da'iraisa Darchei Amayri, how could the Chachamim matter it if it's an Isser Da'iraisa? So Beis Yosef says, since it might save lives through their connections to the government, so they allowed such a haircut. But very nice. It might save lives. But we don't recognize Hatzalas Nefashos for the future. So maybe that shows that a remote possibility of saving a life is considered saving a life, although I would argue that that's not conclusive at all. There, it's a style of haircut which is Darchei Amayri. But if the reason you're doing it is to save a life, then you're not violating the Isser. This is not an act of following the ways of the Amayri. Maybe this is a manner of saving a life. That might not be Darchei Amayri. Okay, final case. This was brought to Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach. A very interesting question regarding saving a life in the future. The Rosh Yeshiva of Chevron, Rav Moshe Mordechai Farbstein, wrote a letter to Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach regarding the following case. Let's see if we can find it in your sheets. Let's see. Page 41. Thank you. So the question is like this. A man is serving in the Army Intelligence Corps. He's on a team that exposed communication channels of a hostile country and deciphered its protocols. This man's role was to manage the computer system that deciphered the codes. Doing so was Chil Shabbos. He told his commanders he's willing to decipher the codes on Shabbos only if it's necessary to be Mechal Shabbos. If it's not necessary, if it's a code coming from an African country and it's not relevant to the state of Israel, he's not willing to do it. So the supervisor said, okay, they trust his judgment only if he has factual evidence. So meaning he needs to decipher all the codes, he only needs to release his conclusions if he felt it was relevant to save lives. He would have to decipher everything, he would only have to communicate it if it was relevant to Pikuach Nefashos. The question was he allowed to decipher everything? Because it's only a question whether it's relevant to saving lives. it's not definite that it would be saving lives. And Reb Shlomo Zalman said it was mutter. He needed to decipher all the codes. He did not have to communicate all the codes. And Reb Shlomo Zalman said a chidush nifla that might have a lot of bearing on this subject. And Reb Shlomo Zalman said as follows: even though we have no basis for this in all of Shas and all of Poskim, when it comes to Chilul Shabbos, if someone's life is in danger, you desecrate Shabbos. If people's lives are not in danger, you don't even desecrate Shabbos for a rabbin. But there is a chiluk between an individual and a tzibor. And therefore, is it likely that by deciphering this code and that code and this code and that code, you'd be saving lives? No, it's unlikely. And if we'd be dealing with individuals, you would not be able to do it. But now we're not dealing with individuals anymore, we're dealing with a rabbin. We're dealing with the tzibor. The threshold of what constitutes danger of life is different when it comes to a yachid and when it comes to a rabbin. If you're working for the IDF or you're working for security personnel, and there's a very remote possibility it would put the tzibor's life in danger, but the tzibor's life might be in danger, then what doesn't necessarily meet the threshold for an individual would meet the threshold for a community. And what ordinarily you wouldn't be allowed to be Mechal Shabbos for, you would be obligated to be Mechal Shabbos when it comes to the tzibor. So bottom line is that might be a very strong basis. If somebody would see a terrorist attack, somebody would see somebody being harmed, and by snapping a picture of this individual, you could be rescuing the tzibor. You're saving the welfare of the tzibor, then it possibly would be permitted to do something like that. Okay, so these are just some of the fundamental principles. In the first year we discussed whether a Mechalel Shabbos is allowed to desecrate Shabbos to save a life. And this year we discussed a very subtle area of halacha, namely, let's just make it very clear, to save someone's life in the future, definitely, that you're allowed to be Mechal Shabbos. To maybe save someone's life right now on Shabbos, you're allowed to desecrate Shabbos. To maybe save someone's life in the future is very questionable. Possibly you can only violate the Rabbanans. To maybe save the life of the tzibor, then you have the chiddush of Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach that might be permitted on Shabbos. Okay, everyone, enjoy the rest of your day. We're just going to make one small rule, that in this room we're not allowing any phones. Not for davening and not for learning. Okay, so we ask everybody, from mincha on, it can't be off, it can't be on vibrate, you can't cancel service. Just please do not bring the phones into the room for the shiurim and davening. Thank you. Shkoyach.